Hi everyone, I am Neil Andre Gokong together with my partner Sandra Pauline Bakong. And today we're having a presentation about bioenergy. But before that, let us first know what is bioenergy and its related terms. So what is bioenergy? The balance between an animal's energy intake and usage for various life-sustaining systems is the subject of bioenergetics, such as osmoregulation, digestion, locomotion, tissue synthesis. The source of the animal's energy intake is food, and its sources of energy loss include heat, excrement, urine, and other gaseous losses. The nutritionist may build the ration in accordance with the animal's energy requirements, thanks to bioenergetics, which also aids the appropriately assessing various feedstuffs. Given that feed accounts for the majority, less than 65% of the cost of rearing livestock, choosing the correct diet will reduce feed costs, improve animal productivity, and improve animal health while reducing nutrient loss to the environment. In the US, the calorie is the unit usually used to express feed energy. In other countries and scientific journals, the joule is used as the unit to express energy. 1 calorie is the amount of the heat required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius from 15.5 degrees Celsius to 16.5 degrees Celsius. 1000 calorie is 1 kilocalorie, and 1 kilocalorie is 4.184 joules. For practical purposes, kilocalorie is commonly used in ration formulation and in expressing caloric value of feeds. Energy measurements. Different energy measurements and flow of energy in the animal are shown in the next slide. Now let's move on to the different terminologies in bioenergy. So first is gross energy. What is gross energy? Gross energy, or GE, is the total amount of chemical energy in the diet consumed. It is also known as the heat of combustion. GE content of feed is measured as a heat liberated during complete burning or oxidation of the feed sample and is determined by an apparatus called a bomb calorimeter. Briefly, the feed sample is burned in a combustion chamber or bomb, inserted to another chamber containing a known weight of water. The heat liberated during burning of the feed raises the temperature of the water from the weight of the sample, the weight of the water, and the increase in temperature. The G of the feed can be calculated. This measurement is easy, precise, and accurate. However, GE does not have much practical value as it does not provide much information on the nutritional value of the feed and does not account for palatability, digestibility, or other animal physiological factors. High protein and high fat feeds will have more energy than high carbohydrate feeds, and feeds with high ash will have less energy than lower ash feeds. Gross energy is the amount of heat liberated when a feed sample is completely burned into carbon dioxide and water, and is determined by a bomb calorimeter. To determine the fraction of the GE that animals utilize for different metabolic processes, animal bioassay studies or digestion trials should be conducted to assess different losses through feces, urine, gas, and heat. So now let's move on to digestible energy. Digestible energy, or DE, is the energy remaining in the diet after fecal energy is subtracted. DE represents the indigestible components of the feed that will be excreted in the feces. However, they still contain energy that was not utilized by the animal. Fecal loss of energy is the major source of energy loss to the animal and depends on the nature of the feed. For example, diets containing high fiber may have less digestibility. The fecal loss will be higher than starch-based diets. And why? Because DE measurements need fecal energy loss. Animal feeding trials need to be conducted. Digestibility trials are easy to conduct. Total feed intake and total fecal output are recorded, and G is determined based on the diet and fecal matter using a bomb calorimeter. The carbohydrate fraction of digestibility is highly variable due to the presence of fiber, less digestible, and non-fiber, starch, a highly digestible component. DE is not a true value and is an apparent value as the gastrointestinal tract contributes to extra energy avoided in feces. This extra energy originates from endogenous sources such as slough-off cells, unused enzymes, or other microbial contributions. Most digestible energy calculated as gross energy minus fecal energy. Most digestible energy values in feed tables are experimentally determined using live animals feeding trials. Now, let us move on to metabolizable energy, or ME. It is the amount of energy that is still usable for metabolism after urine loss and gaseous losses from the gastrointestinal system are deducted from digestible energy. Values obtained indicates losses resulting from the animal's digestion, fermentation, and metabolism of its diet. The main one is urinary loss, which is the total amount of energy lost in the urine. Although urinary losses are typically steady, they may rise when a high-protein meal is consumed. The final byproduct of metabolism, which includes energy in various chemicals urea, is urine. Gaseous products of digestion include combustible gases produced by the digestive tract during fermentation of food by microbes, methane, carbon monoxide, and hydrogen. In ruminants, 4% to 8% of feed energy is lost from the rumen as methane. Losses from gaseous loss are minor and are ignored in monogastric species. On average, combined energy losses in gases and urine are about 18% of digestible energy in ruminant animals. ME is calculated as urinary energy, or UE, minus gaseous energy. So, to determine metabolizable energy, metabolic trials are conducted using live animals. Daily intake like feed and losses such as fecal, urinary, gases of energy are documented. Breathing masks or chambers are used to assess gaseous losses. Bump calorimetry is done on all the samples. The amount of methane expelled is documented and is multiplied by its energy concentration, 13.2 megacalorie per kilogram. Collection of urine and measuring gaseous losses are prone to errors, and thus, ME is less accurate. Diets with high protein contents can increase urea loss, and diets with fiber can increase methane and acetate loss. ME is usually conducted in poultry because urine and feces are voided together and gaseous loss is negligible in these species. ME is more difficult to determine than DE, and most of the tabular values for ME are calculated. ME can be used for two purposes. Now, let's move on to the net energy. Net energy is ME minus the heat generated by the inefficiency of transforming energy from one form to another. Simply speaking, heat generated is heat lost during the energy transformation process and is called the heat increment, or HI. So here's the formula for net energy. NE represents the fraction of the total energy consumed that is utilized for production purposes. The NE values in feed tables are derived from the total digestible nutrients, or the TDN, DE body weights, and regression equations based on experiments depending on the species. HI, or heat increment, is a complex idea that is challenging to determine with accuracy. Live animals constantly produce heat, and therefore HI relies on comparing animals who were fed to those who are fasting. Thus, heat increment refers to the total amount of heat generated during the process of chewing, digesting, and ingesting food and absorbing nutrients from the intestine. When an animal fasts, nutrients that are stored are utilized rather than those that are absorbed. So, heat increment represents the difference in the efficiency of using absorbed nutrients, like feed animals, versus stored nutrients of fasted animals. The type of feed, such as fiber versus starch, also can affect HI. The formula for getting heat increment is HI is equals to heat loss of the eating animals minus heat loss of the fasting animal.
Now, we have the methods for measuring heat production and net energy. To determine the NE, or the net energy, HI has to be measured first, and it is not an easy task. Measuring HI requires whole animal calorimeter, respiration chambers. This equipment is very expensive and is limited. Therefore, NE values are limited, especially for large animals. Total heat production measured by direct or indirect calorimetry is often employed in NE calculation. Alternatively, NE can be determined by measuring the energy retention of an animal using the comparative slaughter technique. First, we have the calorimetry. Animals lose heat to the environment through conduction, convection, radiation, or evaporation. The latter loss is through the skin, respiratory tract, or excreta. Heat loss is measured directly using direct calorimetry or indirect calorimetry. First, we will discuss the direct calorimetry. It is sensible heat loss is measured as a rise in temperature of the medium, example the water, circulating outside the walls of the chamber. Also, these structures are called whole room calorimeters. Also, direct calorimetry provides a measure of energy expended in the form of heat. Next, indirect calorimetry is based on the principle that metabolic heat production is the result of the oxidation of organic compound. Thus, heat production can be calculated from the amount of oxygen consumed and the amount of carbon dioxide produced. So, indirect calorimetry systems estimate respiratory gas exchange as a surrogate for substrate consumed and produced during metabolism. Take note, this is done by one of four methods: confinement, closed circuit, total collection, and open circuit approaches. Open or closed indirect calorimetry can be possible. The open type, which is the most typical, may use as a mass, hood, or animal chamber. Accurate measurements are made of air intake, carbon dioxide output, and methane emission. Controlling air intake and carbon dioxide emission is made much simpler by automated gas analysis and computer control. So these kinds of devices are frequently used. However, measurement errors can have an impact on the outcome. So let us remember that direct calorimetry measures heat production directly. Indirect calorimetry measures gas exchange as it is related to heat production from the oxidation of organic compounds. Now, comparative slaughter technique. First, the remaining are fed the same ration for a certain period of time and are then slaughtered, and body composition is determined. Second, energy retention is then determined as the difference between body energy content in the initial baseline animals versus those from the animals at the end of the trial. Information derived simulates live animals feeding trials under normal condition but requires a large number of animals and is time-consuming, expensive, laborious, and destructive. Note that the comparative slaughter technique is a better estimate than calorimetry but needs a long time and is costly, and the animals can be used only once. Now, we have the feeding systems in direct formulation. Energy is the most important commodity of a diet, and all feeding systems seek to match the nutrient need of the animals. As explained, GE is of no value to the animal as it does not give any information on digestibility or palatability. In the US, among the different energy systems, DE is commonly used in swine and ME is commonly used in poultry. In ruminants, in addition to NE, total digestible nutrients or TDN analysis is also used.
Total digestible nutrients. The formula for TDN is equal to digestible crude protein plus digestible crude fiber plus digestible nitrogen-free extract plus the quantity of digestible ether extract times 2.25. Several factors can influence energy need such as activity, body size, environment, physiological state such as pregnancy or lactation, breed or stains, hide thickness, and coat conditions. Remember that excess or inadequate energy intake can lead to several disorders in food-producing animals.